Welcome back to the Breakfast Show 2. We're here with Derieck Hodges, and we're going to be doing a 5-part interview to get you ready for your tax season for the 2022 tax season. And here we have our first interview to talk a little bit about how to be ready. How should people start gathering all of those forms for their taxes?
Yeah, it's good. It's so important to have kind of this posture of, all right, I got to do my taxes, kind of get in the right mindset. And a lot of tax preparers, CPAs, they'll have a checklist. And if you ask them, they can certainly give you one. But honestly, I think if you take your prior tax return, so much of it will be the same in 2022. So I think go through that, get all your income categories, your W-2s, any 1099s, any of those things, and get those kind of organized, kind of sequentially down the tax return. And then think about, well, what did change in 2022 versus 2021?
And I know that a lot of people have a lot of different documents that they may need for their tax returns, you know, W-2s, 1099, there's so many different forms. How do we make sure that we have all of those together? I know that they all come in at different times in the mail, and it can often lead to unorganization.
Definitely. The nice thing is right now, almost all of them should be in. I think what gets tricky now is we have to think about where they all are going to be sent.
Yes.
So it's very common now that many of them are sent electronically. So you may have to dig through your emails and see if you got communication, and then go log into those various places. Then, of course, you're still going to probably get a number of those through the mail. And I think the ultimate goal is take that checklist or take your old tax return and go through and just look at all the line items on the return and start to match up and make sure you're not missing any of those documents.
And I know, like for, instance, myself, I have different documents this year than I did last year. And some of them, I'm not even sure exactly what they are. I guess would the best bet in terms of that be to maybe do a little bit of research, kind of Google what is this certain document, and that would be helpful?
Absolutely. The IRS's website is actually quite robust. And then, of course, there's some third-party websites that you can go to, but you just always want to make sure you're going to a good source.
Right.
But absolutely, just type in the IRS tax form, and you'll usually get a pretty good sense of what it is.
And then, we should definitely probably stay organized throughout this whole process, because tax season, that can be kind of frightening in itself with all the documents that you get. Is there a good way to organize all of those different documents?
I'm glad you said that. I really think the more we organize throughout the year, it gets better. And so if you're doing a lot of different tax activities throughout the year, so what if you did a Roth conversion or some other thing? I think it's just good to have kind of a file system or a notebook, or put it on a spreadsheet of what you did throughout the year. Maybe make a notation of I changed jobs, and that way you kind of are building your own checklist that's very personal to you. So if I knew I stopped this employer and I started a new one, I know I'm going to have a couple W-2s. So I think kind of just doing a little bit of a diary throughout the year in your tax folder is a good idea.
Right. And then are there any major deadlines that people need to be aware of when they're doing their taxes, or is it just that last day?
Yeah, I think for the most part, it's, we got to think about, typically April 15th, but, we can do extensions if we can't get all of our things done. But what's important to remember is if we do an extension, we're still obligated to pay the expected tax liability before, on the tax deadline.
Right. And then is there a good time to do your taxes? Is it right at the beginning, in the middle, right at the end? Is there a good time?
It's funny. I typically like to see people, if they can, file early, as much because of fraud detection or fraud prevention. But it's interesting. Yesterday, I just saw a notification where the IRS is encouraging people to not file early. Not so much, it doesn't apply to Missouri residents as much as some of our neighboring states. There's a number of states that gave some aid during the COVID era, and the IRS is trying to determine right now the taxability of that.
Right.
And so they're actually saying you might want to postpone until they make their ruling. And here we are right in the middle of tax season.
Right, exactly. Well, Derieck, that was all such great information on how to be ready for tax season. Hopefully you guys learned something that you can take with you as you do your taxes, or if you send them off to be done by a professional. We'll be right back.